Word Balloon is brought to you by the League of Word Balloon Listeners. Hi, everybody. Welcome back. It's time again for another episode of Word Balloon Live. Busy Wednesday. John Suntress here. Really happy to welcome Devin Grayson back to Word Balloon. This is the first time we've done video, but she's been on the show before. And welcome back, Devin.
Thank you so much. Great to be here, John.
And it's great to talk to you about some of your brand new books that you have coming up. And
I'm so excited.
Yeah, absolutely. So have they announced the release date for the new Image book?
Yeah, the new
pardon me, Dark Horse. Is this the Berger Book?
This is Berger Books through Dark Horse. Yes, it's going into comic stores in late October, and it will be in bookstores in early November.
Wow, excellent.
Rewild, yes.
What can you tell us about Rewild?
So this is a contemporary fairy tale about the climate crisis, using fairies as an analogy for our relationship to the natural world. So all the damage that humans have done, it's affected the fairies, on a sort of deep genetic biological level, and they're pissed and they're coming for us. But it's also there's two main characters, Poe and Demond, and they're both for very different reasons struggling with concerns of mental health. And it's in part also an examination of the difference between individual mental health issues and sort of collective insanity, which I think is the bigger issue that we all need to be looking at today. Absolutely.
Here. And I know it's a subject, too, that you've explored both personally and through your stories.
Exactly. Yeah. And so this just felt, this is sort of the synthesis of everything I've wanted to talk about and do. I'm just really excited about it. The artist is amazing. Her name is Jana Adamovic, and I met her in Spain through one of David Macho's crazy conventions in Barcelona.
Oh, great.
Yeah. And then she actually is Serbian, though. She lives in Serbia, and she was recently knighted in France. So she's my favorite international woman of mystery.
Wow, that's incredible.
She's so cool.
Have you done David's podcast yet?
Yes, I did. I did it about a couple months into the lockdown. We had a great talk. Yeah,
show. Great. Yeah. Truly, I love that show, and I'm always looking for great interview shows. So
Yeah.
it definitely fits the bill. So that's
He's
really
so
cool.
fun, and he knows everyone, and
Yeah.
he does a lot of behind the scenes connecting like this. Like, he's actually behind a lot of the creative pairings that we stumble upon.
Understood. Now I don't know. Is this? I don't know what is this a scene from the book?
Yes, that is a splash page that we're looking at right now. That's Demond imagining the fairy apocalypse before it actually happens,
Wow.
and being terrified. Yeah, these are interior pages that Jan is doing the inking and coloring. That's Poe. Poe is a fairy changeling, or as she likes to clarify, actually the human child that the fairies took when they were planting a changeling in a crib. So she was raised by fairies and comes in, or so she, or was she, so she says, and she comes into Damon's city, warning about this catastrophe that's about to happen, and telling him that he has to build a park. He's a engineer, and she wants him to turn the mall that he's building into a park so that the fairies have a place to go to sort of appease them. And so they end up with their worlds and ideas clashing.
Very cool. Now, initial arc, what, 4 issues, 5 issues, 6?
It's 4 chapters, and it's it's a graphic novel. It all comes out at once.
Excuse me. Okay, great. Wow. Very cool. That's amazing. And I'm glad you're working with Karen. This is great.
Yeah.
Had you worked with Karen in the past?
She was technically the editor in charge of User that I did with Joan Hilty. So she was above Joan Hilty when I was doing that. But we didn't work together directly. This is the first time I've really worked right with her, and it's just been a transformative experience. I adore her, and the whole team at Berger Books is fantastic. I've been loving it.
That's excellent. And, I really, all the Vertigo alums, including Joan, are among my favorite editors and my favorite conversations I've had over the years. I've really gotten to know Shelley Bond in the last couple of years.
Yeah.
And she's terrific too. And Karen, I only got one opportunity to interview her like almost 15 years ago now. And it was at New York Comic-Con, and literally like a 10-minute video interview. So I keep bugging Dark Horse to get her back for me. Somebody I've wanted to speak to for years. Working with Rucka and Jen Van Meter as she has, and yourself. No, it's just like really all the Vertigo people, and I'm sure the same is true now that Karen has her imprint at Dark Horse and stuff. They're just great tastemakers. I mean, they really, I think, recognize great talent, and all the writers and artists that have come through Vertigo and subsequent projects and stuff. I just really respect their choices in terms of when they were repping a publisher going, no, we gotta work with these people on this book.
Yeah. And I love the whole approach to stories and comics as a medium that can hold all of these amazing stories. It doesn't have to be superheroes all the time. And in my old age, I'm not down on superheroes. I still love it, but I'm starting to not believe as deeply as I used to.
Funny.
I worry that those narratives are not helpful to where we are as a society. I sort of feel like chosen one story arcs and arcs where somebody swoops down and saves everybody else, or we're looking to someone else for the solution. That's not going to get us out of the mess that we're in now. So I really wanted to tell a different kind of story, and that's what Rewild is.
I can appreciate that. And again, I think depending on the writer, what they want to do with it, because really, the superhero story can tell any kind of
that's absolutely true.
Sure. No, but I appreciate the discussion that has been going on with the social ills that we're all facing today, and I do understand that. But by the same token, I don't want to see it go away. I'd rather see it change and adapt to the current social problems, and find ways of telling stories and saying, hey, God, as well, being the fan that you've been for decades, that there've always been great stories that the superheroes can't conquer some of those things. I mean, the great Green Lantern, Green Arrow story, Hard Traveling Heroes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, so no, and that's the cool thing is you can tell those kind of social question stories, and there is no great answer. So yeah, I mean, it's a new challenge for a new status quo.
So I think it'd
Definitely.
be really interesting to see how we approach that. Individualism is such a part of the American psyche, and sort of how do we? I've been studying a lot about the environmental crisis to write this story, and the thing that came through most clearly for me was that the thing that's going to work, the only thing that's going to work, is for all of us to do everything at once together, and sort of thinking about how do you get that to happen. It's so counter to the way we normally view our daily lives and our deeper mythologies. So it'll be really interesting to see if we can make that cultural shift.
I hear you. Absolutely. How has this last year been for you? Has it temporarily stalled any projects? Have you had more time? Have you gotten more inventive in terms of the way some of your other fellow creators have, in terms of maybe seeking out other platforms beyond the traditional comic stores and things like that? What's the year been like for you?
It's my work process hasn't changed too much. I've always been alone in a room with a computer, and so that didn't change, except that my family's now locked in here with me. But as I was saying earlier, I sort of enjoy that. I do love them, and I like having them close. The Yeah, I guess it does give us more time to reflect. There was a brief pause in the publishing schedule for Rewild. We started back in 2019, or maybe even late 2018. But it wasn't too bad. I think we had pencils down for 4 to 6 months or something, and then jumped right back in. So, but that gave us time to reflect and deepen the story, and so much TV watching and book reading, and consumption of it. Like, talk about the sort of the refilling the well idea. There's been just a tremendous opportunity to do that. So I've been putting together reading lists for myself and diving into all kinds of different subjects, and sort of maybe enjoying it more than I should have. you
No,
can
I
knock me
understand.
down anytime. I'm good.
Well, and truly, I want to hear about some of the stuff you've been watching later on in the conversation. But right now, I'll address one of the questions here, and it was two subjects I did want to get into with you, as far as Devin Grayson greatest hits. And Mark asks first, and we'll get into this, any Denny O'Neil stories. But he also says, regarding Gotham Knights, it felt like a very different Batman series at the time, focusing on a wider swath of Gotham characters than most books at the time. It felt like it fit with the regular Bat books, but it also felt a little more mature and character based. Can you go into the dynamics of writing Gotham Knights?
Well, those actually dovetail beautifully, because Gotham Knights came about with Denny sitting me down and saying, if you were going to write a Batman book, what would it be? And I said, well, it has to be about the Bat family. What interests me most about the character of Batman is the idea that he's had to sacrifice so much to become as amazing as he is. And I think one of the things he sacrificed was sort of healthy, sociological relationships. They're taxed a little bit in his world, but that hasn't stopped this sort of ever expanding group of extremely loyal people from gathering around him. And I really wanted to explore those relationships. What keeps them so loyal? What do they get out of being attached to him? What does he get from them? And so just letting the relationships be the focus and the drive of the book was my idea, and he signed off on it, and off we went.
That's cool. It's funny. I meant to pick up an individual shot of a cover. It's in this great little montage of covers that you sent out. And it's right there. I don't know if people can see my pointer, but it's in the next to last row, and it's 1, 2, 3, 4 from the left, and it's that fantastic Gotham
the
Knight
penny.
cover. Yeah, the penny and Aquaman, and that great story that you told. I forget who your artist was on that. I don't know if you remember.
Oh gosh, I'm blanking. Was that Roger Robinson, or had we?
Maybe I'm gonna, something. I'll hunt for the cover, but I love where that story went, because it really did. It was, just Batman, like, anxious and not knowing what to do with himself in the Batcave, and checking in with everybody. And I know I've told you this before in our last conversation, but I just loved how he kept bugging Oracle, and just like, Have you checked this neighborhood? Have you checked that neighborhood? Maybe you ought to do this. Maybe you ought to do that. And finally, Dick Grayson pops in and goes, hey, maybe you ought to leave us alone.
Some people have social lives, Bruce.
Exactly. And it's so great. And it's just like, and of course, stoic Batman, although he knows, he's like, yeah, sorry.
Right.
and then Aquaman shows up, and it's to, from the cataclysm, the giant penny gets stuck in a fissure. And Batman needs help pulling it out or whatever. And the great thing is just the way you wrapped it up with Arthur saying, if you just wanted to hang out, like, you could just call. You don't have to make up an excuse for me to come out, man.
I can bring over pizza and beers. It's all good. I think that's something we all struggle with, is knowing when to ask and how to ask for help. And so just when you do it with Batman, it is sort of funnier and leaner.
Well, yeah, and again, because this is a air quotes weakness of Batman. Can you just be a human being? I'll get back to you on that. I don't know.
Exactly, I don't remember.
Yeah. So truly, that always stood out as like one of my favorite one shots from your Gotham Knights period. And really, what a tremendous run. And I still cannot get over that you came to Batman through the animated series. That was really your first.
Yeah. 100%. And I was back when we were talking about Vertigo, I wanted to mention too, that Vertigo was so important to my initial relationship with comics because it was the first line that I recognized the literary references that they were using and stuff, having not come from the superhero universe.
Cool.
And I felt welcomed. I remember reading, like Neil Gaiman's Sandman and feeling like, oh, he is talking to me. Like I know where all these references are coming from, that this correlates to things I've read before. And so it was really exciting to feel welcomed into the medium that way. And then, but then I fell head over heels in love with the Gotham crew. And I'm sure, I'd seen the Adam West show when I was a kid that had been on, but I didn't, it didn't permeate in the same way that the animated series did. That just hit me. And especially that relationship between Batman and Robin and Bruce and Dick was just, the idea that guy raised a kid. I had to get in there. I had to write that.
Well, and then you explored further, I think, in your Titans paperback novel.
Mm-hmm.
That you did. And I love that. And again, absolutely. And also kind of what was it called again?
Inheritance.
Yes, indeed. And God, again, and you'll forgive me, but I'm going to reference our previous talk as well, that I know you ruffled some feathers of Titan fans because you kind of, there's a little homoerotic little like subtext, and forgive me if I'm taking it too far. But
no.
That was great. I mean, honestly, I thought that was really fun. And it's like, leave her alone. That was fantastic. I'm like, come on.
I sort of regret it. I feel like I was over caffeinated, and I think the behind the scenes stuff that people don't understand is the deadlines that we're on when we're writing this kind of stuff. And so you have to keep the energy going to complete a novel. So my energy process is a lot of loud music and iced coffee. And so looking back on that, I'm like, if it was so overt that it was distracting to people, then it shouldn't be there. Like, you don't want anything that takes away from the story. So in that sense, I regret it. But I like my Ollie playful. And I like the idea that they're conscious about the things that other people say about them and give each other a hard time about it sometimes.
100%. And also, honestly, that line of DC Universe paperbacks, there's so many really great stories in there, including Denny's own retelling of the first couple chapters of the Question Run.
Right.
That he put in Helltown. And all that stuff. Priest, I loved his Green Lantern book that he did. And so many books. And truly, I forget who my guest was earlier this week. I was telling him that a couple of years ago, I went to Book Expo when it was here in Chicago, and I was checking out a lot of the licensed books. Oh, it was Alex Segura. And, and also with the news that they said that a lot of the Marvel novels, Audible is going to put out as audiobooks.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah, they did an audiobook of my Doctor Strange book, and it was like, it's better than the book. It's fantastic. They do a radio production. Cool. With voices, and it's really fun.
So, hey, and let's talk about that for a second. Boy, I didn't read that. Tell me about that story, because I guarantee you I'm going to be combing the used book, page at Amazon and trying to grab one.
Well, backing on what you said about how great that line was, I love seeing comic writers write in prose, and for me,
Yeah.
that's my first language. I'm
Sure.
actually, I find that easier in some ways than comic scripting. But so this was not a tie-in with the movie, but to like help promote the Doctor Strange movie before it came out. So the marching instructions were, get people excited about the movie, but don't reveal anything that happens in the movie. And I said, okay, great. So can I see the script for the movie? No. So the whole thing was an exercise in not contradicting any part of a story I knew nothing about while writing a story to get people excited about a story I knew nothing about. But the experience of writing that book was actually really remarkable. I wasn't very familiar with Doctor Strange when I started, but my husband's a big fan. He's like, "Oh, do it! The guy's so cool." So I did a whole first draft without quite getting my head around the character, and I was just looking at it, going, "No, I need to rewrite that." And as I was looking for inspiration, I stumbled across an internet column by Colin Smith, who is a teacher, among other things, and a comic scholar. And he'd just done this deep dive into the original Doctor Strange books and just had such love for them, and it drew this portrait of the character that I was like, now I know who he is. And I was so excited to go back in and do the next draft. And it just felt so much more alive. And now I'm obsessed with him and waiting for Mark Waid to stop writing so I can have that series.
I understand. And I'll be honest, no, I've really loved Mark's run. I thought,
it's wonderful.
Yeah. And, but also now, you mentioned movie tie-ins and stuff. Are there any plans? Because obviously we're all waiting very excitedly about the Black Widow movie that's coming up. And I always forget how to say, is it Irina? I forget her.
Yelena.
Yelena.
Yelena, yeah, like Helen, but in Russian. Yeah, Yelena.
I'm with you. Absolutely. Great. Both Widows are great. Any plans to do a miniseries to tie into the movie?
Well, I don't know. I got the chance to revisit her recently with the Widowmaker's story with Red Guardian that just came out, and we had Michelle Bandini did the art on that. It's beautiful, and I can't imagine that Marvel wouldn't continue using her, but I don't really know what the plan. I don't know what's in the movie. I don't know what they're doing next. We talked about this a little before the show, but there's so little communication between the comic branch of the superhero world and the movie branch. And she's my baby, and I was very excited to find out that she had such a prominent role in the movie. But I don't even know what her backstory is in the movie yet.
Right, and plus also obviously Red Guardian. Well, I'm assuming that Widowmaker miniseries maybe was supposed to coincide for the original release.
Yeah, it was. And then the release got pushed back. So I'm sure once the movie finally comes out, they'll do more. And I tried to set her up in Widowmaker's Yelena as a character who really go in a bunch of different directions with her. But I wanted, that thing we were talking about earlier about what can superheroes do to be useful now. That was really the question that I was trying to tackle in Widowmakers. So she sort of came up with her own idea based on her skill set of going after the 1% and taking them down on their own terms. So that would be fun to watch if they want to go that way.
Absolutely. And I'm hoping that the movie, much in the same way that the Falcon and Winter Soldier is addressing the Captain America question and everything, I look forward to seeing Red Guardian and how much of a shadow through a Russian interpretation of that kind of hero, how similar he is to Captain America.
It's fascinating with characters like that, and even really with Natalie, that someone who is a Soviet character through and through, but as we keep marching through in time, that no longer makes sense with their ages. So you have to sort of play these games of how do you give someone a Soviet mentality if they can't really have been part of the Soviet Union. And
yeah, but then again, Putin's clearly a product of the Soviet times and the KGB, and honestly, every front line that examines the politics of modern Russia and everything, I'm right there, and it's like, what is that? And
and Alexei's old enough that he does still carry that mantle proudly. Sure. So that was fun. Yeah,
absolutely, and also in this post-Trump world, how many secrets are going to shake out.
Mm-hmm.
So, so, and then back to current project, or I should say recent projects. You did this with Humanoids, right?
Omni, yeah, that's part of their H1 line, which was really fascinating. It was a new superhero universe that they created. And I did that with Aletha Martinez was the artist, and that was yet again a whole different approach of how to the lead character Cecilia Cobina was actually put together by a team of people before I even got there, and so she had this sort of interesting but inconsistent background. A couple different writers had contributed to it, and they had the idea that she had super intelligence, but no one had really defined what that meant. So I ended up in this really fun place where, a lot of the pieces of the puzzle were on the table, but no one had put it together yet. And so I got to think about super intelligence in a different way. And I didn't want to do the boring sort of Sherlock Holmes ultra analytical thing. I feel like we've seen that a lot. And so I looked for a way to do a more feminine version of super intelligence, but also a broader version. So I introduced the idea of the multi-intelligences, and that her brain can access all the different ways that we can be smart at the same time. And it was really fun.
Plus having a character that is a doctor, and also a doctor that operates on an international level with Doctors Without Borders too. That's great. I loved Batwing. When Judd Winnick had first conceived it, the first Batwing, being African and I believe being a physician as well. I might be wrong about that, but I think that's a real interesting opportunity to tell a different kind of hero story.
Right. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, she was already so obviously a good character. So then it was like, okay, how can we make her do good now that we know that's what she wants to be in the world? Mm-hmm.
Absolutely, that's cool. Has this been was it a graphic novel, or was it?
No, this was a series, and yes, the first 4 issues that Aletha and I did have been collected into a trade paperback, and then I turned the series over to Melanie Cooper is continuing the writing, and I think her second for the 5 through 8 will also be collected, I'm sure.
That's cool. That's excellent. Are you going to do more with Humanoids? That's our buddy Wade again. So.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm done for now, because I was already in the middle of Rewild when this came along, and I was like, I don't really have time, but because he was involved and he asked nicely, I was doing that as a favor. But yeah, I actually really enjoyed myself, and I would be open to going back.
That's cool. I know too. You were telling me as we were messaging back and forth, you got a story in the Green Arrow 80th anniversary.
Yes. Yeah, we're doing all the fun 80th anniversary. Those are great. We haven't done big, multi-use creator collabs like that for a long time. It's really fun to see those again. So yeah, I have a little 8-page Roy Harper story, who is always my other guy. Him and Dick Grayson were the titans that I just really felt close to. So it was really fun to write him again. And I sort of said to them, I haven't been keeping up with things. I have fans occasionally emailing me about all the horrible things that you've done to Roy since I've left.
I was going to say, yeah.
So I said, if I'm writing him, he has 2 arms and a daughter, and they're like, yes, that's what we want.
Right. No kidding. I know. And honestly, I love James Robinson, but I'm like, dude, you're totally putting Roy through the ringer and everything. And losing the arm and losing
Leanne,
yeah. Oh my God. Heartbreaking. How do you, and honestly, obviously that, Green Arrow and Speedy really were Batman and Robin ciphers when they were first created. But how do you see Roy and Dick? And obviously very different characters. I certainly know the backstories, but how do you see their differences?
Completely different. I really think the key to Roy Harper is that he's a West Coast guy. He was raised in Arizona, by the Navajo, and he's super laid back and chilled and engaged in nature and the present moment in a way that really doesn't make sense for most of us. It's not typical American thinking, but he's also, a genius assimilationist. So if you meet him, he's going to seem like the most American white guy you can meet, but that's a facade. He's doing that to fit in, and underneath that is this really this well of community connection and connection to the earth, and he really has a very rich interior life, and he loves his daughter, and he knows that she is smarter than he will ever be. His her mother is a super genius, a super villain, but a super genius.
Right.
And so he, in my mind, the way to handle that is that he's just decided he's going to be honest with her about everything, and including his foibles and his sometimes troubled relationship with Ollie and all of that. And he puts it on the table for her to deal with as she will. So I love that relationship, and I think it's just right for some kind of lone wolf and cub treatment, right?
Wow.
Right? I feel like the fans have grown up, like we have kids now and stuff. Like, this isn't foreign territory to us. For a long time, there was sort of a DC moratorium on relationships and families, and I'm like, no, that's where we all are. We want to see that stuff with these characters. So that's Roy to me. Roy's the real guy's guy, but super laid back and chilled. If he would always have a beer in his hand, if you were in his house, he has good taste in music. Dick, on the other hand, hyperactive. Like, he would pace like a caged panther if you tried to keep him in an apartment for 10 minutes. He's just, bursting with energy, a laser focus, but a darting laser focus. So whatever it is that he's focused on, he's 100% into it in that moment. But then, somebody's in trouble and whoo, he's over there doing that. And you're just like, whoa, what happened to all that attention I was just getting?
That's outstanding. Absolutely.
And of course he's super devoted to Batman and happy to talk about that and connect himself to him and stuff in a way that Roy's a little cagier about his relationship with Ollie. That wasn't always as supportive for him. They had some pretty big issues in the middle of that. So did Dick and Bruce, of course, but Dick would never admit that to someone casually, whereas Ollie would be like, Roy would be like, yeah, I know what you mean. I struggled a little with my father figure too, and Dick would just like shut you down flat on that. No, you don't understand. You don't understand.
Yeah. Bruce is great. No, I get it. And you're absolutely right. And they were flawed fathers in both of their own ways. Mm-hmm. But yeah, and also, Dick, well, and I guess like you're saying, the way you feel about Roy and everything, Roy did come through it okay. And then he did get and he had a tougher road to it and everything with the drug abuse and right. And the experiences he had. But yeah, I do appreciate that. Well, really, that generation of Titans, and I'm really glad that, as you say, first of all, that DC has returned to thinking about things in terms of family and legacy. Because really, when the New 52 happened, it was like you guys are trying too hard. You're really forgetting about what we all loved growing up on this stuff, and I agree with you. But also that the Titans do finally have this opportunity to be adult heroes now. And I really hope, based on what happened in that death metal event, I hope that Roy is back beyond just this 80-page giant, and we are going to see more Roy stories moving forward.
I would love that. David Wielgoss was the editor on both those projects, letting me revisit my Titans and my Roy. And he's clearly, he's a self-professed fan of the very era that we're discussing. And I feel like the block on it had a very clear name and face, and once he left, it's like, okay, now we can do families and relationships again. Yay.
Yeah, really. And mentioning your Nightwing run, and another seminal run that I think really was a pleasure to read, and also just the different things that you introduced in there. And again, it's really challenging a lot of conventions about Dick Grayson and Nightwing, I think, in your run, and like the tarantula thing comes to mind. Obviously.
Thank you. Yeah. That's another kind of like the Ollie material in the book that you brought up. That doesn't always go over well with readers, and there was some controversy in that I regret, because it overshadowed the story that I was trying to tell, and I said some stupid things about it at the time. Man, social media does not let you grow up. You're like, that was 20 years ago. I've learned since then, I promise.
Yeah, and truly, I'm not bringing it up to
oh, no, it's fine. I appreciate having the opportunity to discuss it for that very reason. But yes, I loved writing that story, and I was really interested in what would it take to let someone like Dick Grayson, I couldn't bring him to actually commit a murder, but what would have to be happening for him to even allow one to occur in his vicinity. And that's what I was trying to explore there.
I understand. And again, I think people continue to challenge the status quo with Dick Grayson in the various, from his secret agent period with and Steely to really what Jurgens and others have been doing with him recently as well. Is it tough? Because as you said, you weren't kind of keeping up with Roy. I mean, are these like, ex boyfriends or girlfriends in terms of like, once you're done writing them and everything, it's like, I don't even want to know because I'm done with that relationship. You know what I mean?
Very much so. I think I've used that analogy before. You're, you wish them well. You really hope things go well for them, but you don't want to be looking at their Facebook feed every day, it's weird. And I mean, but for me, I don't know if that's true for all writers. I think there's some writers who are very seeped in comics from an early age and they just love them and they keep up with them. For me, the habit came to me late in life and I never really fully got into reading serialized stories the way you'd need to be keeping up with stuff. So I tend to read in sort of research bursts. Before I started writing Titans, I literally read every Titan issue I could get my hands on from whatever the 40 years at that point before me. But I read them all at once. And then once I was done, I didn't read anymore. I sort of moved on to the next thing. I don't know how usual that is, but for me, that's really weird to read someone else. Even with the movies, people are like, what did you think of the movie? Or it's like, I got to put words in Batman's mouth. I don't need to see someone else do it. Like they're just going to be wrong.
So you haven't watched like the Titans TV show?
No, I've not. Yeah. Okay. I have a hard time. Like Gotham, the show.
Sure. Well, Gotham. Honestly, I don't, not to shit on Gotham. I'll say something real fast about Gotham. It was waiting for Godot. And it's like, okay, come on. It's like you're teasing us. And I know Bruce is 12 years old, but it's like, I don't know. I couldn't keep up with it. What were your thoughts on Gotham?
Well, I didn't see it. I was just going to say my Twitter moniker is Gothamette, and I got so worried that people were going to think it was in response to that. And I'm like, I haven't even watched it. But just so having not watched it, I really haven't. I haven't even seen 2 minutes of it. But just based on the premise, it also felt off to me. And sort of going back to Denny for a second, one of the things that we talked a lot about was the ways in which Batman's presence in Gotham created the rogues gallery that was there.
Right.
And so it's really weird to think that all the villains were running around before there was a Batman. That kind of turns that whole story on its head in a way that doesn't make sense to me. But I can't complain about it. I didn't actually watch it. I don't know. Maybe they had a perfect explanation for that. I don't know.
Well, and again, I mean, it ran 5 years, so it definitely had its audience, and you can't deny that. But no, I felt the same way, and I ended up bailing. So what? Because I do want to talk more about Denny. But what recent or long term? What superhero films or television have you allowed yourself to watch or had an interest in watching?
We watched the first couple seasons of The Flash with my kiddo because he was really into it.
Awesome.
And it was really fun, though. I'm a role play gamer before everything else. And the experience I kept having of The Flash was that it's like watching somebody's RP. Like they're having Flash adventures.
That's hilarious.
But he really loved it. And I loved that. It was put forth in a way that he could enjoy it and we could sit there with him and have fun. Superheroes. It's just not my medium. It's not what I gravitate toward. I'll go into sci-fi. Like I love The Expanse. That's absolutely tremendous show. Yep. Yeah. And fun stuff, Killing Eve, fun spy stuff.
Killing Eve was fantastic. Yes. Yeah, and I loved Orphan Black. Good Lord.
Yes. Oh, so good. So good. I missed that. Yeah.
I'm with you. Devin, I don't know. Are you a Star Trek person?
No, not really. My mom had it on. Like I'm familiar with it. It was something in the background in the house, but it always.
Cool. It's all right. Well, then no, that's all right. We've dodged the discussion because I have to confess, I'm not the biggest fan of New Trek, and not because there are characters of color and orientation and female leads. I'm like, no, Star Trek's always been like that. And that's been my argument. And I guess the PR machine behind New Trek has driven me nuts of, wow, we're really breaking new ground. And it's like, nah, not really.
Right.
I'm like, sorry, they've been doing it for 50 years, but okay, whatever you say.
that's what the whole universe hinges on. But okay.
Yeah, but also, I don't, all right. So yeah, sci-fi. I'm trying to think of any other. What shows do you stream? What do you guys like to watch?
We've actually, speaking of crazy sci-fi, we've been rewatching Fringe. Did you ever see that?
Oh, sure, absolutely.
It's so much fun. It's we were watching last night. We're just like, man, this show is nothing without John Noble, though. Like he's just holding everything together.
I'm not sure,
but talk about pacing. That show, the entire first season, they don't even really mention the premise. Like there's little hints, but you don't know what's going on until towards the end of the second season, if I recall.
Yeah, well, I remember. It's funny, in 2009, right before the first JJ Star Trek movie, I got a chance to talk to Nimoy about his role in Fringe and everything. And the Kennedy headlines and stuff like that. It was like, another show like that. Did you ever see that South African show called Charlie Jade?
No.
It was a show that it's discovered that there are 3 parallel Earths, and the whole conspiracy of one of these really corrupt. There's our Earth, and then one Earth is completely deleted or depleted from a resource standpoint, and that's because the third Earth is taking the resources of one Earth and putting it in this other one. And this cop kind of stumbles on all this, and also because it was shot in South Africa, it really gave it a different look, even from an urban standpoint, the locales that they were using and stuff. So it only lasted 1 season, and Sci-Fi Channel buried it in overnights, but it is streaming in a lot of free streamers and a lot of.
I'll go look that up. Yeah.
So and unfortunately, they never resolved the story, but I found it an incredibly great concept. So and it kind of was fringy in its own way.
Yeah, it sounds like it.
Yeah. So I'll give you a non sci-fi or regular genre kind of show that I love. I love The Crown. I'm so into it.
Yes. My husband wouldn't watch that with me, but I loved it. I watched every moment of that. That was really fun. And for some reason, that reminds me of the chess one. That we just.
Oh yeah. Queen's Gambit.
Queen's Gambit. Thank you. Yes, that was great. There's so much good. There's just a lot of good material out there.
Are you getting a chance to pitch any TV or film?
No, I'm not connected to that world yet.
Okay. Do you want to be?
I'm not sure. I guess you'd be crazy not to say yes, just because TV is so good right now. And now that we're doing long form storytelling there so much, I think someone with a background in comics could, it's sort of naturally set up for that. The world itself is a little crazy. I'm in Northern California, and my friends in Southern California, I'm just like, better you than me, man.
I'm hip.
It's crazy.
No, I understand. How about the other comic book avenues? Like, Brubaker obviously, started doing stuff with Marcos Martin at Panel Syndicate, and some of these other platforms for comics that aren't made through, like, would you ever want to crowdfund or anything?
That would be really interesting. After User, I really wanted to do another creator-owned project that felt like me, and really Rewild is sort of, I'm like, yes, this is it. This is what. So now that I've proven to myself I can do it, I'll definitely be looking for different opportunities to tell these kind of stories and to move around in genre a little bit. I ache to write more prose. That really is my first love.
That's great.
I would love to find a way to do more of that.
Excellent. Well, and here's another short piece that you did, and I'm really glad that you hooked up with the Ahoy people.
Oh, yeah, that was fun.
It's great to see, because truly, Snifter of Blood is just hilarious. Well, everything that Ahoy puts out.
They're so great. They are.
Yeah. Tom Pyre and Stuart Moore and Company and Jamal Igle, all of them.
I know them all from back in the day, and it's so great. This, like, talk about a passion project, right? This is the perfect thing for them to be doing, and they're doing such a great job with it.
And it's just really filling a great void in terms of really funny books. God, and again, as a Batman fan, you must love The Wrong Earth.
Yeah, it's tremendous. It's
my God. Yeah, I'm with you. So tell me about this story in the Poe collection here.
Oh, I just did a riff on Cask of, I can never even say it right, Amontillado.
Oh, I know what you're talking about. Yeah. wouldn't know how to say it either. Don't sweat it.
But I sort of reframed it as like, what would it be like to have Poe as one of your, writer friends who's coming over to dinners and talking about his stories all the time, and everyone's trying to get him to stop. And he hung out with such great people, so it was really fun to sort of do a little research on all of them, and just have them all throw bread rolls at him at the end. And
who were his writer friends? I didn't know, or whatever famous people he hung with. I had no idea.
I'm blanking right now, but Thoreau and Emerson, that whole crew. Yeah. So he was buddies with all of them, and they hung out a lot. And so I remember that from my college transcendentalism class.
Yes,
right?
Absolutely.
So it was great to revisit them. And I sort of feel about Thoreau similar to how I feel about Poe, that he's got a bigger reputation than perhaps he deserves, but I adore Emerson, so it was really fun getting him.
That's awesome. Yeah. That's hilarious. Very funny. No, I didn't know they were all friendly that way. That's really
cool. They were contemporaries, and
yeah. No,
I don't know how much they really hung out at Emerson's house, but it could have happened.
Well, that's why I was going to say you're right. Certainly from a time period standpoint, they were contemporaries. But no, I love that. That's a great idea. Very funny. So tell me more about Denny, because really Denny's the guy who, I guess,
man of the hour.
So how did you break through it, DC?
I was working a day job in North California that had email and a fax machine. So I spent most of my days when I was supposed to be doing, data, whatever, pestering the editors over there, particularly Scott Peterson, who endured, I'd send him like crazy postcards that with like fill in the blank things that he could send back. And I just, befriended them and said that I hadn't read comics. I didn't know anything about them, but I was, a literature major. I studied fiction. I loved stories. What did I need to learn, to be able to work in this medium? Because by then I'd seen Batman the Animated Series and fallen in love and knew that I had to write those characters in their proper medium. So Scott and Darren and Gorf and Denny were all just terrifically generous, sort of sending back ideas like, go take this course, go read this book, make sure you've read everything Alan Moore ever wrote, make sure. Wow. And so we sort of did a long distance tutelage for a while. And then Darren just called up one day and said, okay, whatever it was, 12-page script, go. So, it was so heady and so much fun. And I think I'd done like the Arsenal Plus. I'd done 2 one-offs in a short story or something. I was like, yeah, I'm moving to New York.
That's awesome.
But I did. And, and Denny was there and he gave me Catwoman and we just hit it off immediately. He lived in Nyack, which I sort of think of as New York's Berkeley, which is where I grew up.
Oh, that's awesome. That is a great way. I love that. Go on.
So we sort of, right away, we understood each other's vibe, and like me, he was a student of Buddhism and meditation, and vegetarian. So we would go to these amazing vegetarian meals and talk about storytelling and how weird but wonderful superhero comics were, and how strange but wonderful the fandom was, and then really just talk about the craft of stories and meditation and Buddhism and all that great stuff. And what I remember about him is that he was sort of a Cohen riddle master. If you had a problem with a story, I remember going into him with a Catwoman story once, and I was just stuck. And I said, I don't know how to resolve this. And he, listened, and then he sort of cocked his head and he said, okay, who is the story really about? And with that one question, I was like, oh, I know exactly what to do now. Thank you. And you'd run off, and he'd just laugh because, in his mind, he hadn't really said anything, but he did. He absorbed the question. He understood it. He framed it back. He was just lovely to talk to. And we did some of the Bat Summits at his place in Nyack with his wife, Mary Fran, there. And they were just so lovely about letting everybody in and, making everyone comfortable while we thought up these horrible things we could do to the characters. And
That's excellent. I consider myself incredibly fortunate that I had the conversations I did with Denny.
Yeah,
especially in the last couple of years.
Those are some great interviews. Yeah, I love.
Oh, thanks, buddy. That's seriously, that means a lot because you certainly knew him better than I did. And God, I just consider myself incredibly fortunate that Larry, heard this 2006 interview I did with him about Helltown and as much about
Oh,
the
yeah.
question as Batman. And he's just like, hey, would you be interested in talking to my dad? I'm like, God, yes.
Yes,
I'm like,
please.
well, and every time I wanted to, I would usually try to get a hint of where Denny was health-wise through Mike Gold, because Mike and I are friends.
Right.
And I'd be like, yeah, I'm thinking about maybe asking Denny. And it's like, Denny's had some
Not
hard
such
issues.
a great time.
Yeah, maybe not a great time. And then when Mary Fran passed away, and I'm just like, God, horrible. And then unfortunately, God, right after that car accident he had, he was like, sitting at home. And that's why Larry's like, he's bored out of his mind. He'd really be great if you could talk to him. I'm like, are you nuts? I'm like, absolutely. So I had these marathon conversations with him, and he couldn't have been sweeter. And really, again, as someone that read his stuff as early as my first comics back in the 70s, he was one of my original writers that I turned to.
And those interviews, you get him on some of that stream of consciousness stuff that he does so beautifully. There's a couple times where he goes into that, and he's just such a natural storyteller. And had so much to share. Yeah, I miss him a lot.
I get it. No, absolutely. Did you read his autobiography?
I did. What was the word for that? I looked up. There's that particular type of nonfiction that's fictionalized. It had a word that I hadn't heard before. I've forgotten it now, but I was like, it was sort of my introduction to that. I was like, oh, okay, that's exactly what he's doing. Yeah. Knowing his life and then reading how he presented it there, it was just absolutely fascinating. And what a story.
Yeah. No, I agree. And what a loss. It bums me out. I don't know. I know for Batman's 80th, he was working on a few short stories, and I don't know what happened with that, if he didn't complete them or whatever.
Right.
Yeah, it's crazy. I literally on Sunday spoke to Joseph Stefano's son.
Oh, wow.
Well, because we've been doing this deep dive on Outer Limits, and I was trying to experiment with my podcast, and I knew there was a show, like I wanted to do a podcast where I looked back at either movies or a television show, and I'm so glad Gabe Hardman suggested Outer Limits, just because he was fascinated by specifically Stefano and the cinematographer Conrad Hall.
Oh,
and it's like, and also ever since they put out those Blu-rays of Outer Limits, you really appreciated the light and shadow that they were shooting with. But like Denny and others, I mean, Stefano's a guy that it's like, oh, I really wanted to go back and examine his work, and we got to talk to his son about his dad's works, and also apparently he owns the stories. The Stefano estate owns the Outer Limits stories. They can't use.
I didn't know that. Interesting.
Yeah, they can't use the title, but it's been interesting and a great opportunity to kind of re-explore his work. And I mean, really, Denny, I hope some great comic critic or scholar really sits down with Denny's body of work and really goes through the different eras.
That would be great. Yeah. And pull together, get his emails and his letters, just pull it all together. And that would be fantastic.
And as much as an editor, as a writer himself. And I mean, again, that's so great to hear that kind of simple advice led you to your solution and everything without really giving you a specific XYZ.
Right. Yeah, no, he was never pushy about stories. He always wanted you to sort of find the path that you'd led for yourself. He was just very good at seeing it before you did and sort of gently getting you back on it. Speaking of advice, though, I have to pass on the number one thing he said to me with just such heartfelt sincerity. I would feel remiss to not share it with everybody else, which is take really good care of your teeth.
Oh, wow.
He was so bummed out about dental stuff later. He said it hurt so much and it was such a pain. And he just said, floss.
That's hilarious and good advice. That's fantastic. That's amazing. Jesus. Are you, and again, right now, obviously we're in the weird world of no live events. Right. How many cons did you do back in the day? Would you go?
Well, yeah, back in the day, though, for me is way back in the day. So I would crisscross America and try to do like one international one. These days, I'd be so psyched for some more international travel as soon as we can do that again. I haven't had anything I really wanted to talk about for a while, but with Rewild, I will go anywhere and talk to anyone. I'm so excited.
Well, that's
I just think
excellent.
Yana's art is gorgeous, and I feel good about the story, and yeah.
I'm showing pages here. There we go.
Go.
Yeah. No, great stuff, and I'm excited to read the story. It comes out in October.
Yes, late October, early November.
Very cool. Excellent. From Berger Books, the imprint that Karen has over at Dark Horse. Gives you another excuse to try and wrangle Karen for a sit down and everything, but that's great. No, honestly, and again, we've got the Green Arrow 80th anniversary, your Roy Harper story.
Right, which is about all the things we discussed. It's basically a little story quickly covering my understanding of his history, which he's telling to Leanne as if it were a Navajo legend.
Excellent. And once again, pick up the first volume of Omni from Humanoids.
Yes,
and absolutely from Ahoy, Edgar Allan Poe's Snifter of Blood, this second issue. I think that's excellent. Any like are we going to see? And of course, Widowmaker from Marvel earlier.
Right.
So that's available. Yeah, I don't know. Any other? I mean, you don't have to specify if you can't talk about it, but will we see more Big Two work from you soon?
I think so. Yes, I can't give any specifics, but yes, I think things are in the works. They're very early stages, but
no problem. Okay. Yeah. Well, Devin, I'm sorry it's been so long since we've talked.
Oh no, it's fine. It's I was joking with my husband. We were talking about last year, and he was trying to remember how old he was, and his answer was way off. And I was like, "No, honey, you're not that old." And he's like, "Well, but last year took 4 years, so." Yeah, it really did.
Hey, I'm in my mid-50s, and believe me, I'm like, how old am I now? Wait a minute. Oh yeah, Jesus. Oh yeah, I'm sorry.
2020. Yeah, that lasted at least 4 years, right?
Oh God, absolutely. My goodness. Well, it sounds like you're coping well, and I'm glad to hear that.
Life's
good.
And
yeah, hey, seriously, well done on the last batch of books, and
thanks so much.
I'm excited about the future stories. No, I truly appreciate you talking to me today, and I know everyone else does. So yeah, thank you very much, Devin Grayson. Hey, I'll take this opportunity to point out some other great word balloons that are coming up. Tomorrow I'll be talking to Jimmy Palmiotti and Amanda Connor, and Friday morning I'll be talking with Rob Paulson, who's the great voice actor. He was Pinky and Pinky and the Brain and Yakko and Animaniacs, and certainly they're seeing a revival of that on Hulu. But he's also played 2 of the 4. I believe Michelangelo and Donatello for the Turtles. So it's always fun to talk to Rob about what's going on with him in voiceover land. So that's how we're closing out the week this week. But we had a nice midweek conversation today with Devin Grayson, which I greatly appreciate. Thanks again, Devin.
Thank you. My pleasure. Give Jimmy and Amanda my love.
I absolutely will. Everybody, thanks a lot for watching. We'll talk again on Word Balloon Live tomorrow. Stay safe.